going to stay at the 50,000-foot level and ask some questions about what lessons we learned about real national energy policies worldwide. And I think the previous panel started to move into some of that around, is there really, do you really need a balanced energy policy? Because we could see similar accidents to Fukushima happening with gas or wind or solar or coal or other things that might make those technologies less likely. And is the real risk that we should be looking at not the risk of radiation out of a nuclear accident or the risk of air pollution out of coal or those types of risk, is the real risk we should be looking at the lack of electricity to power industrial societies. And I think Japan is going to see some real issues this summer based on shutting down its nuclear capacity as it moves forward. I think of Germany a little differently than the previous speakers. I think of Germany as a grand experiment, okay? You know, renewables can do it. I'm surprised that the French aren't cheering the Germans on, because if in fact they don't have enough power to do their industrial base, that industrial base will move throughout the European Union, and the French stand to gain a lot through that change in the technology. So do you ask yourself the questions coming out of Fukushima, is the risk not having the power as opposed to the risk of radiation or the risk of some other piece? Because when you think about what does not having power mean in Japan, it means you may not have clean water, you may not have sanitation, you don't have refrigeration. And so there are a lot of things that electricity and energy does for society that you start to lose in this process, and you may not have jobs. So how do you begin to rebuild it? And let's remember that the tsunami and the earthquake not only damaged a few, 4 out of, what, 54 or 6 or 7 or 8 nuclear plants out of 54 in Japan, but it also wiped out several fossil plants, it damaged dams, and it flattened a large portion of the grid. So it's not limited to being a nuclear accident. It has much broader implications. And let me name some of those broad implications. One is our design base for infrastructure and power plants correct? And that raises the questions for engineers worldwide. How do you design for natural events or multiple natural events, and are we doing that appropriately? And somebody asked me in another speech I was giving to answer that question. And I'll give you some glimpses into my thinking. I think the design bases are probably okay, because in reality, you can go out the severe accident curve out till Never Never Land. But you can't afford to go out to Never Never Land and designing out. So what you have to think about is maybe mitigating those events that go beyond design basis, and maybe we need more planning and more investment on the back end after the natural event occurs than trying to design for every potential possibility of severe accident, whether it be natural or man-made. And so, but we need to relook at that in large scale.